how empowering women could help end world hunger. The Democratic Republic of Congo approves the use of an Ebola vaccination to fight off a new outbreak. And how an ancient Hindu religious practice is helping survivors of genocide in Rwanda. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. You are in for Vincent McCurry. This is Africa 54. World Hunger Day was observed Sunday, an annual reminder that millions of people around the world suffer from chronic hunger despite abundant global food production. Persistent food shortages in some regions are linked to deep-seated social inequities and long-term mismanagement. An expert tells VOA's Ladza Hoke that empowering women is key to ending world hunger.
Hunger kills more people around the world than AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. The majority of those living in hunger are suffering from chronic food deficiency, which is the result of persistent poverty, the kind that does not appear in daily news reports.
I mean, right now, what's in the news are the famines in Yemen and in South Sudan and in other countries, the world. Somalia. There has been drought in Ethiopia. There are these emergencies.
John Coonrod is Executive Vice President of the Hunger Project, a 40-year-old non-governmental group that helps communities in 12 countries develop strategies to end hunger.
The largest number of hungry people are in India. The largest percentage of place where the hunger is the most widespread is in Africa. There's about 220 million hungry people in Africa, about 280 million hungry people in South Asia.
While floods and droughts can cause sporadic food crises, persistent shortages are a result of long-term poor management, says Coonrod. The world produces enough food for 10 billion people, more than enough for the global population of 7.5 billion. But as a result of a range of deeply entrenched social issues in many parts of the world, close to 800 million people are chronically hungry.
Most of the hungry people are food farmers, and most of the food farmers in the world are women.
But while women do most of the agricultural work in patriarchal societies, they are not allowed to make decisions.
When you empower women, they make the decisions that most affect the lives of the family. They're the ones feeding the children, so when they get to make decisions, they prioritize food, they prioritize health care, they prioritize education. So because they're directly the ones in these societies doing the work, they know what needs to be done.
The Hunger Project works on educating communities on how to become self-reliant, and that takes the participation of all their members. Coonrod says world food projects are by and large successful. World hunger has been nearly cut in half since 1990, and he says the goal of ending it by 2030 is achievable. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Now, severe drought has left 6 million people in Somalia in need of food and medical assistance. Aid agencies warn children are the most at risk. VOA's Muhammad Yusuf reports from Baidoa, Somalia, on the impact of the crisis on children.
Most of the children in this primary school arrived in Baidoa recently, displaced by the severe drought gripping Somalia. 7-year-old Abdi Hassan is an orphan. He lives in a nearby IDP camp with his grandmother. He struggles with his lessons. The teachers say he comes to school hungry. They say he's not the only one. Ambiya Mohammed Dahir attended this school as a child and has taught here for 25 years. She says they need a school feeding program.
A malnourished child cannot remember what he was taught in class. If he's asked a question about last class, he cannot remember it, and that is because of lack of food. You have to keep repeating the same lessons over and over again due to the lack of good memory.
Aid agencies say more than 270,000 school-aged children have been displaced. The UN Children's Fund says the drought has forced 40,000 children out of school.
The drought has triple impact. So the drought, disease and displacement is what is impacting children. So the drought affects the family, and it could lead to acute watery diarrhea or children, becoming malnourished and needing more help.
For children over 6 years old at this school, this is their second crisis. Many lived through the 2011 famine in southern and central Somalia. Experts warn that malnutrition as a child can have lifelong impacts on person's health, cognitive development, and even their future earning potential. At a nearby feeding center in Baidoa, children under the age of 5 are provided with nutritious supplements. Mothers must also return the empty packets.
The empty indicates the child has eaten the food. This is to avoid the items being sold in the market. It also puts pressure on the mother to feed the child.
The UN Children's Fund says the number of acutely malnourished children in Somalia has shot up 50% to a projected 1.4 million by the end of the year. UNICEF says an estimated 275,000 are suffering or will suffer from life-threatening severe acute malnutrition. Mohamed Yusuf for VOA News, Baidoa, Somalia.
The Democratic Republic of Congo's Health Ministry has approved the use of a new Ebola vaccine to counter the outbreak of hemorrhagic fever in the northeast that has killed 4 people. The vaccine, known as RVSV-Zibov and developed by Merck, is not yet licensed, but was shown to be highly protective against Ebola in clinical trials published last December. WHO spokesman in Congo says as of last Friday, Congo had registered 52 suspected Ebola cases, adding that the situation appears to be under control. Congo's health ministry spokesman, Jonathan Simba, said that the details of the vaccination campaign would be announced after a meeting of health ministry officials and partners either Monday or Tuesday. Now, 2 days of fighting in Libya have left government and public buildings with extensive damage in the Abu Salim district of Libya's capital, Tripoli. One of the damaged buildings is the Hadaba prison, which housed several Muammar Gaddafi-era officials. Inmates were moved to a secure location by the UN-backed government. The fighting began on Friday when armed groups aligned with the UN-backed government fought to fend off a major offensive by rival Islamist-leaning forces and militia fighters. According to Libya's health ministry officials, 56 people were killed in the fighting. Mourners in Egypt gathered in a church in northeastern of the country Sunday to remember the more than 24 Christians shot dead by unidentified gunmen on Friday. Gunmen attacked a group of Coptic Christians traveling to a monastery in central Egypt, killing at least 29 people and wounding 24, with many children among the victims. Islamic State took responsibility for the attack, which came on the eve of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. The shooting followed a series of church bombings claimed by the militant group in a campaign of violence against the Coptic Christians. Back from his first foreign trip as president, Donald Trump confronts a Russia probe that has expanded into new areas of inquiry during his absence. VOA's Michael Bowman reports a startling allegation is swirling around someone close to the president, personally and politically, his son-in-law and top advisor, Jared Kushner.
As President Trump proclaimed his whirlwind Middle Eastern and European trip a success,
I think we hit a home run no matter where we are.
A media frenzy engulfed one of the most trusted members of Trump's inner circle.
Jared is a very, very successful real estate man in New York. I'm proud of Jared.
News outlets first reported Jared Kushner had become a person of interest in the FBI's probe of Russian meddling in last year's election. Then multiple reports surfaced alleging that before Trump's inauguration, Kushner approached Russia's ambassador about establishing a secret line of communication with Moscow.
It was the context of an election campaign in which the Russians had been intervening to help Donald Trump, to hurt Hillary Clinton. And of course, if these reports are accurate, right after that campaign, after that intervention, to have the president's son-in-law, a key player within the Trump organization, trying to establish a back channel with the Russians through a Russian diplomatic facility, you have to ask, well, who are they hiding the conversations from?
A former intelligence chief could not hide his dismay.
What manner of ignorance, chaos, hubris, suspicion, contempt would you have to think that doing this with the Russian ambassador was a good or an appropriate idea?
Being a person of interest does not mean Kushner is accused or even suspected of wrongdoing. Some news outlets reported Kushner sought a back-channel avenue with Russia to discuss Syria and other thorny topics, something that would be entirely appropriate according to senior administration officials.
It's both normal, in my opinion, and acceptable. Any line of communication to a country, particularly a country like Russia, is a good thing.
Congressional committees already eager to hear from former FBI Director James Comey now anticipate yet another high-profile witness.
I do think ultimately we're going to want Mr. Kushner to come before our committee. I fully expect that that will happen. I'm sure that Mr. Mueller is going to want to look into these allegations as well.
Former FBI Director Robert Mueller was named special counsel in the Russia probe earlier this month, tasked with uncovering any criminal wrongdoing related to Moscow's election interference. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
President Donald Trump is back in Washington after wrapping up his first international trip as president. The 9-day trip was free of any major controversies abroad, but did produce several eyebrow-raising moments. VOA's Bill Gallo reports.
Donald Trump began his trip in Saudi Arabia, where he told a gathering of Muslim leaders he isn't there to lecture.
We are not here to tell other people how to live, what to do, who to be, or how to worship.
But by the end of the trip, Trump's tone had changed dramatically. At a NATO summit in Brussels, Trump chastised U.S. allies for not spending enough on defense.
This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years.
It was a visibly uncomfortable interaction, only made more awkward by Trump's failure to commit to NATO's mutual defense pledge.
He's sending somewhat of a, mixed signals to our allies. If you aren't going to fully commit, or if you're not going to be willing to come out and say that you're fully committed, then I don't think that actually encourages other people to want to buy into more into the alliance.
During the middle of the trip, Trump visited Israel and the Palestinian territories, expressing optimism about the Mideast peace process, but offering few details about how he plans to move the process forward. One way would be to bring Arab nations and Israel together based on their mutual distrust of Iran. Slamming Iran, in fact, a key theme during Trump's foreign trip, says Iranian-American journalist Nagar Mortazavi via Skype.
It seems like he's trying to put Iran at the top of the enemy list, at least when it comes to the Middle East, and forming a new circle of allies that basically what they have in common is Iran as being the enemy.
The rest of Trump's trip, including a meeting with Pope Francis at the Vatican and a meeting with Italy's prime minister, was mostly uneventful. Trump declared his first foreign trip a success, saying in a tweet he saved the U.S. many billions of dollars and millions of jobs. He's now back in Washington, where his administration threatens to be engulfed by a growing controversy surrounding Russia. Bill Gallo, VOA News, Washington.
North Korea fired another short-range ballistic missile early Monday, just days after the G7 demanded that Pyongyang give up its nuclear ambitions. The U.S. Pacific Command says the launch came near the town of Wonsan on North Korea's east coast. The command tracked the missile for 6 minutes before it fell into the Sea of Japan in what is known as Japan's exclusive economic zone. The command says the missile posed no threat to North America, but an angry Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe vowed to respond. It was North Korea's second missile test in a week, coming after the UN threatened more sanctions and G7 leaders condemned the North for its previous launch. North Korea apparently is determined to develop a missile capable of carrying a nuclear weapon and able to reach the U.S. mainland. But it is nearly impossible to know how much progress it has made towards that goal. Along with the threat of more sanctions, the United States has sent a naval force off the Korean peninsula and held joint military exercises with South Korea as warnings. The Trump administration, while serving up strong words against North Korea and its leader Kim Jong-un, has yet to come out with a firm policy on how to react to Pyongyang. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis, however, warned on a Sunday morning television news program that if a diplomatic solution cannot be found for the situation with North Korea, it would be a catastrophic war if this turns into a combat. Kenyans go to the polls on August 8 to elect a president, lawmakers and local officials. Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga presented his election document Sunday to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission ahead of the polls. Odinga is trying to unseat incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is seeking a second term. This is Odinga's fourth run as a presidential candidate. The last elections in 2013 were largely peaceful, but the country is still haunted by the 2 months of violence that followed the disputed 2007 presidential elections. More than 1,200 people were killed and 600,000 fled their homes. South Africa's President Jacob Zuma defeated a motion of no confidence against him Sunday at a meeting of top officials of the ruling African National Congress Party. Zuma has also been facing pressure from opposition parties and civil society groups since he fired Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan in March. A source who attended the ANC meeting that started on Friday in the capital, Pretoria, reported that as many as 70 party officials took part in the debate for and against the motion, and that the president had the support of most speakers. Zuma is scheduled to step down from the ANC leadership in December. His term as South African head of state runs until 2019. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We are also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, as the U.S. honors war veterans, a former prisoner of war preaches the gospel of forgiveness. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
On the final Monday in May, Americans observe Memorial Day to pay homage to the people who died while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. Special attention is paid to American warriors killed during the controversial Vietnam War, fought between communists in the north and anti-communists in the south. VOA's reporter Nicoletta Ilyich recently caught up with one of the many Americans who spent years as a prisoner of war.
Air Force Captain Guy Gruters says he volunteered for the Vietnam War to prevent communism from spreading throughout the world. He went to Vietnam in early 1967, flying 400 combat missions, and was shot down twice.
The first time I was rescued by the very brave men of the rescue Charlie Green helicopters. The second time, we were all by ourselves in North Vietnam, and it was right close to dark. I managed to get to a patch of woods and evade capture for about 45 minutes.
The military unit that captured him took him across the rice paddies to a village where he stayed for a day. After a long, difficult trip by truck, all the POWs were brought to a staging camp in Hanoi. A week later, he and a dozen other servicemen had reached the notorious Hanoi Hilton.
That's where they had all the torture to get the interrogations for the military information.
Gudis said he was in 6 different camps in 5 years until his release in March 1973, after North Vietnam was forced to agree to peace talks.
In December of '72, the U.S. Air Force and Navy bombed heavily military targets in the Hanoi area. It was called the Christmas bombing of 1972. In those 11 days, they dropped 40,000 tons of bomb.
Despite his ordeal as a prisoner and the unpopularity of the war back home, Gudis says the justification is evident today.
By the president of Indonesia, by the president of Thailand and Malaysia, by the president of the Philippines, that because of the United States fighting in Vietnam, they had the courage to fight the communist insurgencies in their country successfully. And they told him that because of our courage in Vietnam, there are 450 million people free today that would have been communist.
Now, many years later, Guy Gudis is a motivational speaker who lectures that we should forget, forgive, and love our enemies.
Cities across the United States have erected memorials to their hometown heroes who fought and died in America's wars, from the American Revolution of 1776 to the ongoing conflicts in Afghanistan and the Middle East. Washington, D.C. is no exception. The capital city area is home to some of the best-known military monuments, as Faith Lapidos reports on this Memorial Day.
There are well over a dozen memorials to honor those who died fighting for the United States. This is one of the best known, the Marine Corps War Memorial. The statue of Marines raising the flag on Japan's Iwo Jima Island in World War II is modeled after a photograph taken during the battle in 1945. It's dedicated to all personnel of the U.S. Marine Corps who've been killed since 1775. Although many memorials include statues of soldiers, the National World War II Memorial uses architecture to pay tribute to the so-called greatest generation. Bronze panels and granite pillars represent the war years and the unity of the nation. The design includes a field of 4,000 sculpted gold stars to commemorate the more than 400,000 Americans who gave their lives during the conflict. Another wall commemorates the more than 58,000 Americans lost during a war that tore the nation apart. With its stark black granite surface, etched with panel after panel of names, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was as controversial as the war when it was completed in 1982. But it has become one of the country's most powerful and popular memorials, attracting millions of visitors every year. Many leave flowers, notes, and photos at its base. The Korean War Veterans Memorial is another unusual approach to a military monument. One of the newest memorials, it includes 19 2-meter-tall statues of Army, Marine, Navy, and Air Force members advancing through granite strips meant to symbolize Korean rice fields. The site includes a reflecting pool and a listing of the names of those who died or were lost during the 3-year conflict. The 3 soaring arcs of the Air Force Memorial break the horizon with a visual representation of flight. Rather than commemorating a specific conflict, the memorial honors the service and heritage of the men and women of the U.S. Air Force and aviation pioneers. On Memorial Day, these monuments are viewed with special meaning. I'm Faith Lapidos, VOA News, Washington.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, why yoga is increasing in popularity in Rwanda. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Libya, the National Army spokesman says the government warplanes targeted ammunition stores and militants in the city of Derna. In Nigeria, recently released on bail after 18 months in jail, Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra movement, renews call for an independent state. In Lesotho, former Prime Minister holds a rally ahead of elections on June 3rd. In Morocco, protesters rally in the city of Al Hoceima in the northern region of the country where there has been growing social unrest. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Coffins decked out with board games, gravesites doubling as vegetable pouches, or children's toy funeral building bricks, complete with a hearse and a crematorium. Just some of the latest trends for dealing with death. More than 3,500 visitors flocked to a recent one-day expo at Amsterdam's historic Central Westerkerk Church for a peek at new gadgets to help give a loved one a grand final farewell. For those wanting a unique burial for a relative or friend, to others with an appreciation for the morbid, there was plenty on offer, such as a 3D printed urn in the shape of a deceased person's head. So what's behind the trend? The expo organizer believes death should be celebrated, not feared. Next up, with shares of Amazon about to cross the $1,000 mark for the first time, the online retailer has taken an unusual step. Amazon has opened a 4,000 square foot bookstore. It is the first of the two bookstores planned for the New York City, taking all the strength, data and gadgets collected from the popular e-retailer's website and putting them into a store. Books that sell well on Amazon.com or ebooks with strong sales are the books that are chosen for the physical store. Amazon also showcases ebook readers' digital assistant Alexa and its products like Fire TV and the $99 a year membership service, Amazon Prime. And finally, a long line of women chatter excitedly as they rush into their yoga class in Kigali, Rwanda. The classes are popular amongst the community of women, many of whom are affected by a history of genocide, sexual violence, and infection of HIV or AIDS. But in this yoga class, they are able to relax their bodies and minds and take a moment to breathe. Yoga was introduced in Rwanda in 2007 by a local medical NGO, Project AIR, which provides medical and psychosexual help to many women who suffered sexual violence, who are now living with HIV as a result of the genocide. Yoga has become increasingly popular in Rwanda.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry.